Hello and welcome, everyone. We're so glad to see you join us today. Today, we're going to be chatting about a live look at modern finance system built for health nonprofits, specifically in the US. Today, we'll be going over some ways that US nonprofits are simplifying their workflows. I do want to make mention of a few housekeeping items. We're going to keep muted and off camera when we are not speaking, just to make sure you can focus on everyone who's chatting, and so my cats don't start taking over the meeting in the background. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat or the Q&A. We do have time at the end to address them, and we have someone here who will be helping answer them in the chat. And we'll be sending a copy of this recording to your email within 5 business days. And now for a few quick introductions, I'll pass off to Gary to introduce himself.
Thank you, Brie. Hello, everyone. Very excited to be here with all of you. So my name is Gary, as Brie mentioned. I am an account executive at Sparkrock. I've been working in this space for over 15 years now, and I'm really excited about today's conversation, and hopefully I'll get to chat with some of you after the webinar.
And now for Kinley.
Hi, my name's Kinley Graham. I'm a CPA. I'm the Director of Pre-Sales here at Sparkrock. I've been with Sparkrock for nearly 11 years, and the 5 years before that, I worked for a customer as their Chief Information Officer. So if you have any questions while the presentation is going on, just put them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them for you.
And Wendy.
Thanks, Bree. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be your tour guide today as we go through different demo scenarios. I've been working with organizations like yours since 1997 with a focus on reducing manual efforts, paper-based processes, and moving to digital efficient experiences. I look forward to showing you what we have to offer today.
And I'm Bree, the marketing manager at Sparkrock. Been working with nonprofits for 15 years, and I'll be your moderator today. So to get started, I want to start with a poll. I'm going to quickly launch this here. What's the most challenging manual process for your team? Is it purchase to pay workflow, employee reimbursable expenses, credit card reconciliation, or financial reporting? If it's all of the above, please feel free to put it in the chat and let us know. You have a couple seconds to get all those answers in there. Getting some good results. And now we'll take a peek at our findings. So looking at the numbers, we see credit card reconciliation takes the lead. We got some reporting, some expenses, purchase to pay a bit lower. Lucky for you, we're going to chat a bit about this today, so I'm going to pass it off to Gary.
All right, thank you, Brie. Okay, so before we dive into the frustration and the manual process that you have to deal with every single day, as shown from the poll, I want to first introduce you to the Sparkrock solution, right? So this way, you'll have a good idea of who we are, and that will help you to better understand how we solve the challenges that you saw from the poll. All right, so let me start by saying that Sparkrock is a fairly unique solution, as it is a solution that is specifically designed for nonprofit. And among other areas or industries, our software particularly resonates with health and human services organizations. So today we are an organization with more than 100,000 users across the US and Canada as well, an organization that managed over $16 billion in finance across our customer, and that has brought real change to the nonprofit world over the last 2 decades. And this journey actually started about 23 years ago, right? And from the very beginning, our vocation and commitment has been to be 100% focused on nonprofit. Unlike other ERP solutions out there that deal with every type of organization, right? We do not deal with the for-profit organization. We don't get involved in that commercial aspect, right? When we started, we wanted to solve one major problem: how to provide better solution to nonprofit, education, health, and human services. And back then, it was an underserved market, to say the least, with very unsophisticated product. So how did we bring that change? So to do that, we partnered with Microsoft and worked hand in hand with them really from the very beginning, from day one. And when most people think about Microsoft, they do not think about an ERP solution. But Microsoft actually has been a huge player in this market for way over 30 years. And of course, over time, over the last 20 years, Microsoft solution evolved, grew to technology and innovation. And as they grew, well, we grew along with them. So today, our solution is built on top of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And as you can see from the picture here, our solution sits and lives within the Microsoft Dynamics 365 environment. So as a result, you are benefiting from the entire Microsoft ecosystem, right? All the security, the stability, the Microsoft infrastructure, right? This is Microsoft Cloud. This is the privacy, the features, the functionality, the interconnectivity within the Microsoft environment itself, right? Full integration with Excel, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, Power Apps, and so on, right? And of course, now the AI technology with Microsoft Copilot that is fully embedded in our system. So that's the full Microsoft experience. Okay, so that ability to leverage Microsoft ecosystem is really amazing. But now let's talk about what we bring to the table, because this is significant. What we bring to the Microsoft environment is really those layers of capability and features made for non-for-profit organizations that do not exist in the Microsoft environment and that do not exist in the vast majority of ERP solutions either. So most solution out there is really tailored for businesses, right? And businesses are focused, well, as you know, right, on the revenue coming in the organization, right? It's all about their sales, their margin, and all those nice stuff, right? But when you think about non-profit organization, you generally have fewer source of revenue, but bigger chunk of that revenue as you're receiving your grants, you're receiving your donation, right? And as you're receiving those, you are actually heavily focused on the expenses, the money going out of the organization, right? It's all about how you spend that money, making sure that every cent is properly accounted for, well, especially since you must report back to your funders, right? So you have to think about requirements around the fund accounting, the commitment and encumbrances, the invoice approval, the grant accounting, the project accounting, generating specific report, right? Those complex regulatory reports that you have, but that do not exist for the for-profit organization. So in short, actually, what we did is that we look at the level of sophistication that solution like Business Central have on the revenue side, and we bring the same level of sophistication to the expense management side. And this is really a game changer for nonprofit. In order to support you, right, we have a team of 135 wonderful, amazing, and dedicated employees with level of expertise that you will not find anywhere else. And those individuals that you see right here on the screen, right, those are our finance consultant, our customer success manager, our project managers, our support team, right? And they, for the most part, actually come from nonprofit, health and human services organization, right? They work in healthcare, community living, specialty care organization, well, you name it, right? They were in your position, doing your job. They understand your challenges. They understand how to solve those thanks to decades of experience implementing, assisting organization just like yours. And that is really what makes a big difference in your success. And this is actually the reason why many health and human services organizations all over the US have this. Among our customers, we have federally qualified health centers, residential care, disability care, community living, public health authorities, right? And many more that use our solution every single day. And when you look at the numbers, you really realize the type of improvement and growth that nonprofit organizations that have made the choice to modernize their solution could see rapidly. We're talking about increasing your operational efficiency by 30%, reducing your overall IT infrastructure costs, improving security and donor engagement, right? This is huge, right? And this is what I was referencing to earlier when I was talking about game changer. All right, so now that you understand a little bit more about who we are and how we work, let's go back to this poll that we just did a few minutes ago, where we asked you about the most challenging manual process that you are facing today. So the answers that you've provided, right, are very much aligned with what we hear from organizations coming to see us when they're looking to replace their ERP solution, but also aligned with what we hear from nonprofit organizations in general. And those really are the main pain points that you are dealing with, right? So to be successful, you really need to find a solution that can eliminate all those challenges. So it would be interesting for us to see how those challenges are being dealt with in Sparkrock, because we know telling you that we are specifically designed for nonprofit health and human services organization is great, but actually showing you how we actually remove the pain and the manual process that creates frustration for you every day is even better. So let's see how this is tackled in Sparkrock. So let's start with the purchase to pay workflow. And of course, you need to track and process purchase requests, purchase approval, invoices, and payment, right? While you still need to ensure compliance with donor restriction, grant-funded programs, and budget limitation. And many of you have to deal with multiple locations, right? So if I think about, I don't know, the health centers, right? You have obviously multiple clinics. And naturally, without an automated process, an automated system, right? Purchase requests are usually submitted via email or paper copy that land in someone's desk or inbox, right? And that need to be signed, leading to approval delay, miscommunication, and so on. And this is if you even have an enforceable approval process in place, because we've seen organizations where finance just receive invoices that just need to be paid without any approval process, budget checking, or any sort of real control, right? So obviously, you want to avoid that. But overall, regardless of your current process or what your current process is, right, without an automated workflow, right, it remains extremely difficult to maintain a clear audit trail for accountability, right? Without an automated workflow, right, matching POs to invoice and ensuring expenses are properly allocated between restricted and unrestricted fund become time-consuming manual process, right? This increases the risk of errors, duplicate payment, and missed invoices. And I am sure that as I am saying that, right, a lot of you are nodding their head. But here on the screen, you can see the pain points and friction that Sparkrock eliminates and the benefits of the solution. But rather than going through those bullet points, right, let's check in with Wendy and see how this is handled in Sparkrock.
Thanks, Gary. All right, so I'm going to be going into a live demo scenario. We're going to go through that end-to-end purchase to pay process. So we're going to start off this scenario as a department manager user, and they're going to make a request to purchase. So let me just share my screen and bring up my department manager user. All right. So here in my department manager role center, you're going to see very easily I'm able to just choose the option to create a purchase requisition. So I'm just going to click on the action there, and we are now looking at our purchase requisition data entry screen. The first field, of course, is the auto-assign number. The system can automatically know which location I'm at and can automatically populate that. And you're also able to have different types of purchase requests. One of the benefits of this is you can also drive a different approval workflow based upon the type of purchase request that is being entered here. Now, when we get down to the line detail, you'll see that I have a couple of options. One of them is item. And I would use item in a scenario where if you have a warehouse, a stock room, you already have an inventory, you instead of sending a purchase order out to a vendor, you would consume from your inventory. In this example, we're going to use expense type. And so expense type is a feature that Sparkrock has built to really better drive the experience when doing your requisition. So I've chosen an expense type here of program supplies, and I'm just going to put in a general description here. And what we'll see by choosing that expense type, a couple of things have happened for me automatically with that. One, it's automatically defaulted to my GL. Two, I also have a default vendor. So this is important if you have contracts, maybe for this widget, you have a specific vendor that you want to make sure your users are purchasing from. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the account set. And so the account set is going to bring together for me all of the dimensions that are applicable. So as we look at this with that account set, as we move to the right, we're going to see that all of the dimensions along with the GL account have been automatically populated. Now I'm going to enter my quantity and what is the cost per unit. So in this case, I have a purchase requisition here for $20,000. Now, lots of the customers we work with, they require that additional supporting documentation should be included. So for example, maybe you require quotes or 3 quotes, for example, need to be included with that request. Now, when it comes to your budget, we offer both proactive and reactive budget checking. So proactive budget checking, I'm just going to simply click on the check budget and it's going to inform me. You can see that I am well over budget here right now. And if I want to drill down and if I'm wondering like what happened to my budget, what did I spend it all on, you can drill down to the encumbrances or the actuals to get right to the details of what makes up that bucket. Now, I said there's also reactive budget checking. So I'm going to go ahead and just send this along for an approval. So we are going to get a warning about our budget. So, and again, you have options when configuring this, whether it's a warning or a hard stop. In this case, we're just going to move along and we can see that the approval request has been sent and the status is now pending approval. All right, so great. So now what happens is we're going to change our roles and I'm going to go look at this from that approver's perspective. So let me just bring over my approver here. So this is the approval user. You're going to see that my request to approve, this is a universal inbox, everything that needs my attention, and I'm going to be able to see here all of the things that are waiting for my approval. When I'm here, I'm able to either approve them, reject them, delegate, add comments, or even go right into the record. Looking at the full detail record, I have full visibility on any supporting attachments, links, or notes. I can review all the details. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and approve this. Now, you do have the ability to approve as an administrator. So when you look at the approvers that we have on this, we can see on the left-hand side, I have a number of approvers that are configured. And the approval workflow is all based upon a number of factors. So of course, dimensions can control that, but also dollar values and your GLs all together can create the pending approvals for the required users. So we're going to approve this as an administrator. And so now we can see that the status of this has now moved to approved. And so what happens now? So typically, what would happen is you would have maybe a purchasing department. So I'm just going to come into another role center here. So this is my purchasing agent, and we can see here for the purchasing agent, they have an actionable dashboard item looking at all purchase requisitions that have been approved. And so as I look at this, we'll just come to our most recent one here. So here we can see this is the purchase requisition that we had just approved. The purchasing agent picks it up. They're able to see all the details, including notes and attachments. And their step from here is to send this off to the vendor. Now, you also can have an automated workflow. So once the item does get approved, this whole process of creating the purchase order and sending it to the vendor can be automated. So this is just a preview of what would be attached to that email, for example. And you could also attach that to this purchase order as an attachment if you wanted to. All right, so this is now, sorry, we're just going to go ahead and create that purchase order, pardon me. We'll create the purchase order, and then we would send that off to the vendor, and I'm just going to go ahead and release this. So we've made the commitment to the vendor, and now the vendor gets the purchase order, and typically it's the original requester who's going to receive those goods. So as I look at going back to our department manager, the person who originally requested this item, they are able to receive it. And so when they receive this, we're going to see here the pending receiving, and we have an option to either do a full receipt or a partial receipt. So if, for example, I only got half the order, I could just put in how many I actually received. If I did actually receive it all, I can use the autofill quantity to default to all of the quantity that was ordered. And I'm going to go ahead and post this receipt. All right, so that's great. I've got my goods. Now what happens is the accounts payable department will pick this up. And so I'm just going to move back over to an accounts payable role. And as they are looking and analyzing their purchase orders, it's very quick to have a save search that we can look at all purchase orders that have been received but not invoiced. And we can see this one here is at the bottom of the list, the one that we just created here today. And so from here, I'm going to go ahead and create a purchase invoice for this vendor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually receive this against the purchase order receipt. So let me just get that. I'm just going to add an attachment for the invoice. Now it's important to note that with this invoice, you can also leverage the power of OCR and AI to bring that over. And so we're going to now choose the purchase order receipt line. I'm going to choose which purchase order I'm receipting against, and I'm going to go ahead and get my receipt lines by purchase order. So here we can see all the detail from the original request, including the attachments, has all flowed through. All of the coding is maintained, and we have all the details right here. And so what's left for me to do is put a purchase invoice number on here. So if you had brought this in through an OCR service, this invoice number would have automatically been created as well. So let's go ahead and post this invoice. So it's telling us that it's going to close the purchase order. And it's asking us if we want to actually see the posted purchase invoice. So here we can see we have the purchase invoice here, all the detail. And so this now can be paid because it's a posted purchase invoice. We're able to pay this. It also is updating the vendor record, and all the details in regards to their balance and all their statistics are all updated with that order. And we can go ahead and just pay the vendor. And so we can see here we have this same order that we had started the request on today, and we're going to go ahead and make that payment. The vendor details store information such as their payment method, but also if they are a vendor 1099 vendor, and in which case their transactions will be stored for creating those vendor 1099 forms. So now in the payment journal, we're going to go ahead, because this is an EFT, we're going to create the journals for that, and we'll generate the EFT file. And so this is going to create the file. You're going to see it's going to export here. So that is the file that we would send to the bank. And then we're going to do our vendor remittances. And so that's going to inform the vendor that the payment has been made. And then our last step is to post this transaction. And so now what I want to actually point out, in real world, likely you're going to use the features of suggest vendor payments. And so suggest vendor payments is going to allow you to gather everything that needs to be paid. And again, you can filter it by different payment methods, or you can select all payment methods and have the everything here that needs to be paid. Now, if you are printing checks, you may also be interested in positive pay exports. So those are automatically created for you as well. All right, so before I leave purchasing though, I did want to circle back on the vendor 1099 reporting. So if we take a look at this now as a 1099, and I'm just going to look at my vendor preview here under my reports. We can do a vendor overview. And so here we can see the NEC form box, in this case 01, so non-employee payments. And these are showing me all of those vendor 1099 transactions for this specific vendor. And that includes the transaction that we just created today. And it allows you to drill down to the specific details, including the supporting documentation. So that is your end-to-end purchase request to pay process. And from here now, I'm going to hand it back to the team to review the next section.
All right, so purchase to pay checked. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, so the next two items are topics where the feeling of frustration is very common. And as you can see on the screen here, we're going to group the employee expense claim and credit card together, right? This way we can kill two birds with just one stone. So expense claim. We came across many organizations where employees typically submit their expenses via email or paper, and often this is done without consistent formatting. Sometimes they have a template, right, that they can fill, convert to PDF, email to their manager, or drop into an online folder, right, with their receipt, well, which is great, right? But in all cases, all these require the finance team to manually review receipt, categorize expense, making sure that they align with the organization policy. And this process, once again, is time-consuming, particularly if you have a large volume of submission. And of course, it increases the likelihood of errors, misreceipt, misclassified expenses, and so on. When it comes to credit card reconciliation, that is probably the worst and the most time-consuming task that your account payable specialist or whoever in your team is in charge of doing that has to do. And matching credit card transaction with receipt, ensuring that all charges are properly categorized and coded in the system, right, takes a lot of time and effort when done manually, especially if you have a decent volume of transaction and multiple corporate cards to reconcile, right? And I'm sure that your account payable team spend a lot of time sending reminders and chasing people around the office to get those receipts. So it's painful. So how is this handled in Sparkrock, right? So just imagine a solution where the employee can submit their expenses, their receipt, their credit card receipt directly in the system, just from their phone or any device that they want, right? And I'm not talking about just using a totally separate solution, but a solution where everything is connected, right? You are able to have approval workflows, right? They can be as simple or as complex as you want them to be. You can enforce company policies, you can have real-time budget checking and so on, right? And you no longer have to deal with those manual reconciliation. But just to keep it simple, right? Let's see what Wendy has to show us when it comes to the employee expense claim and credit card.
Thanks, Gary. All right. So before we jump right into that employee's expense experience, I'm going to show a little bit of the setup of the purchase cards and how we manage that. So first of all, when we look at the purchasing cards, you're going to see all the people in your organization who have a purchasing card. What is the purchasing card number and what type of card is it? So we can see here James has a Visa and Kinley has a MasterCard, for example. So our process from here is when that credit card statement comes from the bank, we will import that statement into our purchase card journal. And so what that looks like, let me just import that in here. So this is going to be my May Visa transactions. And here we can see all of the transactions have come in. And we have the details regarding the merchant, the charge, and we even get an alert if there's any duplicates. And it allows you to click through and see why it's identifying that record as a duplicate. So if it truly is a duplicate, I would just remove that line from my import, and now we're ready to proceed. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the process option. And so this is going to automatically create the invoice for my credit card company. So here we can see there's a purchase invoice created for my corporate Visa. And we can see each of the purchasing cards totals at the line detail level. And so from here, you would normally go ahead and post this. And depending on your corporate credit card payment terms, this may be recorded as an automated debit from your bank account, for example. And what I want to point out is when we look at the entries for this, you're going to see that in the GL entry, that this has gone to our purchasing card clearing account. And then in turn, you're going to see when the process of coding these transactions and sending them back through to finance, that they're going to clear against that P-card clearing account. All right, so let's go see what that looks like from the employee's perspective. So here's my employee. And this is in my Sparkrock, which is the end user self-serve finance and HRP portal. And we're going to come into the expense claims. So here we are able to see, as we expand our expenses, here's all of the purchasing card transactions that were on this month's credit card that are attributed to me. So it's my job as the credit card holder to review these, as well as to attach my receipts if required, and to code these. So when we're coding these, the first step is the expense type. So what type of expense is this? And so let's say this was a meal, maybe this was breakfast. And as we look at this, we're able to upload our the receipt for this. If I was actually on my phone, I would be able to take a picture and add it all at the same time. And what else you'll notice is based upon my expense type, which in this case was breakfast, my GL has automatically defaulted, and the account set that I'm allowed to attach this to is limited based upon my filters and what I'm allowed to see. And so as we look at this, we're able to further define and you can also, if you needed to change the expense type, you could do that as well, just by making the change here. And so again, once you're done with that, you would click on Save, and then from here, we're ready to code the next one. While we're here, I do also want to point out that you can we support out-of-pocket reimbursable expenses as well. So again, the similar process, but the difference is that I will actually receive a check for these specific expenses. So the P cards are going to clear against the purchasing card, but out of pockets, it's actually going to go through the AP process and cut me a check or an EFT or ACH, whatever my payment method is. One of the things that is quite useful for our customers is you're able to reinforce policies as well. So for example, on my breakfast expense, I have a limit of how much I'm allowed to spend on breakfast. And so it tells me the maximum allowable is $16. So it's actually moved my $20 to $16. Again, I'm able to upload a receipt here. And the expense type drives which GL, the default GL, and now I tag this to the relevant account set. As we look at the advanced details, we can see the account set has automatically populated all of the dimensions. So these are non-financial users, making it simple for them to record their expenses. So now what happens when they're ready to submit these? So I'm just going to submit this one P card expense here. Normally you would select multiple ones, but just for the purpose of this demo, I'll work with this one. We'll click make claim. And so then from there you would, oops, sorry, hold on a second. Here's my pending claim here. So this is going to be a monthly claim. This will be my P card. And we're going to be able to see any expenses that are attached to this. And you can also remove expenses as well. You are able to have full transparency on your budget. So seeing where you are with your budget and whether you're overspending, as well as who your approvers are. So you can check and see who will be approving this for you. So we're going to go ahead and submit this claim. All right, so what this looks like over here on the administrative side is we're going to see that the request to approve it now includes this expense claim. We're able to open that record and we're able to see all of the details that were entered here. So in this case, we have the lunch expense and the attachments. So we're able to see all of the attachments that were included right at the line detail. And also it gives you any policy warnings. So in the expense type, you can drive rules, as you saw, like maximum cost and so on. So now I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And then from here, this gets created into a purchase document, which is going to clear against that purchase card clearing account. Okay, so here's our purchase invoice. It's going to default to the vendor invoice number. And I'm going to go ahead and post this, and we can look at the different GL entries that were created by this. So I'm just going to, here we have our posted purchase invoice. We're going to do our find entries. And here we can see in the GL entries, we can see that it is clearing against the purchasing card clearing account. Now, as you are administrating and managing these P-card transactions, a very useful tool is what we call the purchase card register. And this allows you to simply see any unassigned expenses. So you know who you need to tap on the shoulder. So here we can see all of the expenses that have yet to be coded and have a receipt attached and sent through the reconciliation process. All right, so that was a quick view at the expenses and purchasing card process. And I'm going to now hand it back to Gary as we move forward to the next section.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, so finally, the last item that we would like to explore today is the financial reporting and financial analysis. And we see that quite frequently when we have organizations coming to us once again looking for better solution. Improving reporting capabilities is always one of the top items for nonprofit organization. And very often we have finance teams scratching their head, right, dealing with many different solutions and systems that do not communicate with each other, right? Data from the accounting system, spreadsheet, bank statement, payroll system, right? And of course, well, they need to aggregate all this data, right? They need to reconcile those data to ensure that the information aligns. They also need to prepare like those financial reports for various stakeholders, right? The board of director, the leadership, the finance committee, the program managers, the head of department, the funders, right? And these reports are in many cases formatted and distributed through email or printed copies. And this is really intense, time consuming, and present important risk of errors. And the lack of real-time data forces your team to rely on information that does not reflect the current financial position of your organization, right? Because by the time they get those reports, they're already outdated by several days, sometimes weeks, or even months, right? And you are just blind when you don't have real-time visibility on your budget, your expenses, and your commitments, right? And it makes it very difficult to identify discrepancy or to take appropriate action and decision. Finally, the last thing I want to mention is that when it comes to the health and human services organization, right, you have those regulatory reports, right, that need to be submitted to maybe the Department of Health and Human Services, the Health Resources and Service Administration, right, very important if you are a federally qualified health center, the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services, right, the State Department of Health, and so on, right? And those translate in hours, days, and weeks sometimes to produce those reports, right? So frustration is always around the corner. But once again, let's turn to Wendy and see how reporting and financial analysis is handled in Sparkrock.
Thanks, Gary. I would say reporting is one of my favorite topics for sure. I'm a little bit of a data geek that way. But what you're going to see is reporting is really pervasive throughout the application, allowing you to drive insights from any data that you're looking at. And it also, as Gary mentioned, crosses many different types of stakeholders. So I'm going to start off actually with your non-financial user reporting. So what I mean by that is maybe I'm a department manager and I want to make sure I have full visibility on my budgets and my cost centers. So let me just share my screen, and then from there we'll then go into the back office reporting. So for those end users that you need to push out reporting to, here we are again in Sparkrock, where we were just working on our expenses. But where I'm going to go to now is what we call financial analysis. And so financial analysis allows you as administrators to push out different data sets. So for example, I'm going to look at my projects, and the date range can be driven by my administrators, or I can update it myself as well. And so as we look at all of our different projects here, we are able to see that we are able to have the budget for each of those projects. We can see our commitments. So those are our requisitions, our requests. We have our actuals, and I can drill down on these as well. So as I drill down on these, we're going to come right down to the transactional level, the entries that are made that are making up that bucket and allowing you to understand what is impacting your performance against that budget. If I wanted a different data set, for example, maybe I'm in charge of one of the grants or all of the grants is the case here. Again, you're able to filter on that, see how you're performing against your budget, how much of your budget is available, and again, drill down to those actuals. And including the posting dates, the descriptions, as well as all of the other dimensions that are included in that recorded transaction. All right, so that's your end users. Now let's come take a look at some of the reporting options in the back office. And there's plenty. So first of all, I'm just going to start at the chart of accounts, for example. So here in my chart of accounts, you have full transparency on your budget. So for example, as we look at my supplies and general expenses, we can see our budgeted amount. We can see our commitments. So those are my purchase requests. We can see the encumbrances. Those are my purchase orders. And then we have our net change, which is the actual invoices and payments. Now, when you look at that, actually, let's come back to our net change. What I wanted to point out is when you're looking at large amounts of data like this, you can make use of our filters, but also the analysis tool. And the analysis tool uses Copilot AI to help you build reports that just use natural language. So maybe I want summary totals by quarter, for example. And so just using natural language, I'm able to ask the system to analyze the data that I'm looking at and provide it to me in a different view. So here we can see it's definitely broken out. We have our different quarters here, and I can drill down to the details for each of those transactional level items. So what this is using the tool, including the pivot tool, that you're just using natural language. I can drive this experience, or I can use the tool, and I can share these reports. I can rename them. I can even add in columns from additional tables to this report. So it can be quite extensive. Coming back here to the main page, there's also built-in reporting, of course, for regular financial statements, like your balance sheet, for example. And you're able to control the date range, as well as you can even control the dimensions that it's reporting on. So if I just wanted to look at my balance sheet for one fund, for example, I would just make that selection, and then I would be able to run my report. All reports can come out as either PDF or Excel or XML or data only, and they can be scheduled as well. And when they're scheduled, they'll actually show up here in your report inbox. So if I get a report every month or every week, this is where I will find it. Now, let's talk about some of the more advanced reporting. So as we look at the financial reports tool, this allows you to create custom reports. I'm going to quickly look at this first report called our budget comparisons. So this is showing me my budget comparison over the last several years. And as I look at this report, I can drill down on the actual details to get to all of those transactions. I also can filter this again by different dimensions to get the results just for that particular financial element. And I can also export this, either printing it off as a PDF, or exporting it out into Excel. Now, with the Excel tools as well, part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and really reducing the barriers between your finance system and your other productivity tools, you can use Excel to customize this report. You know, what do you want bolded? What do you want underlined? And that type of thing. All right, let's look at one more reporting option here, and that is the ability to incorporate Power BI reports. So part of the Microsoft ecosystem, real-time integration into your Power BI reports. And I'm just going to bring up one of my reports here. Let me just browse, come into my recent reports, and let's pull one of these reports up. All right, so here you can see that this is quite an extensive reporting package. It has multiple parts, multiple reports for me to view. You're going to see that the Power BI reporting can create quite dramatically appealing visual reports that depending on the type of user you are, some people find easier to consume. With these reports, you can also build in drill down capabilities for these. And so as we look at this, these options here, we can see the ability to expand and drill down on this information. We'll look at a couple other reports here. Commonly asked of us is the aged accounts receivable. So while we do have a standard report in the system for aged accounts receivable, you could also have a package here in Power BI as well. Similarly with your aged accounts payable. All right, so that was a quick look at some of the reporting capabilities within the finance system. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kinley to wrap us up.
Thanks, Wendy. So we just wanted to quickly go over a few of the other capabilities that the Sparkrock product does offer. So we'll start off with APIs and integrations. We do have some standard integration partners for a bunch of different areas of the system. But we also have some standard APIs that are available to all of our customers to facilitate integrations between the products. These work really well. They can connect to lots of other systems, get data into the GL and lots of other parts of the system. We actually have a dedicated fund accounting module because we're constructed for not-for-profits, with lots of us working here having worked at not-for-profits. We know how important fund balancing is and how it's quite a tedious task that takes a lot of time. We've built an entire module around this where it will automatically generate the entries for all of your fund balancing needs. It works really well. It's nice and clean. Then we get into project and grant accounting. We do have a project and grant accounting module where we can have multiple budgets. We can create different dimensions from this. We can track the status of projects and grants. We can build in revenue schedules, lots of great tracking, really works fantastic. We also have a contract management module. This contract management module attaches right into the normal purchasing part of the systems. It allows you to track contracts associated with vendors. You can write those contracts up and down. You can have hard stops on the contract limits. You can also have soft stops with warnings. It allows you to report on the contract, have attachments. Again, really great functionality that's been created for not-for-profits. And then finally, we have fixed assets and inventory modules. Business Central as a whole is a great inventory system, lots of advanced warehousing, things like that. We actually incorporated that into our purchase requisitions. So you have the ability to request, you can purchase from your own inventory and have it delivered out to locations. And our fixed asset module has been built out in lots of neat ways. You can track expenses associated with the assets. You can handle all the advanced TCA posting. So if one of your funders requires you to fully expense the asset in the year that you acquire it, it can also handle the depreciation entries. So when you're doing your government remittances, they can just filter out one account and still get all your great reports. There's lots of other things like that built into the system. Please let us know if you want to know any more information about the system. And that kind of wraps it up. Now, if we have any questions or anything like that, please go ahead and ask them in the chat or throw them in the Q&A section. And then I think Bree's going to poke us with a bunch of those questions.
While you guys have been talking, a few have been sneaking in the chat. So we'll start addressing those. And if anyone else has any questions, please keep putting them in the Q&A. So number one, do you have OCR capabilities?
Yes, we do have OCR capabilities. There are a few options out there. We have OCR that flows directly into the system. You can send your AP invoices to an email address, and the OCR will recognize them, code them, and put them right into the purchase invoice module. It does have the flexibility to attach into other modules as needed. We have had one customer use this to populate deposit lines, actually, because it's what made sense for them. They had a separate email address set up. They could email in this picture of the deposit slip, and it would automatically generate all of the deposit lines. So it's pretty powerful, and it can connect throughout the system.
Now the next one, this is a pretty popular question. I've heard it before. Can this replace the typical third-party system for expenses?
Oh, yes, definitely. I love our expense module. It works fantastic. Wendy showed you all the great credit card functionality that was in there. It's really powerful. It's flexible. It works on your phone. You can take pictures of your receipts, put it in there. It's really great. There's not really a need for other expense platforms, and it integrates directly into our system, and everything is there immediately when you submit it.
All right. Is there any limit on approval configuration?
Oh, that's a good one. So I know when I was looking for a system years and years ago, this was a bottleneck that did exist, because some of those really complex approval structures, they can get a little unruly. In our system, it's really powerful. Your approvals are controlled by dimensions and GL accounts. You can bulk edit. You can have different thresholds, groups, sequential, pick approver, and a lovely over budget approver that was absolutely my best friend. Now, all that being said, there is no limit on the number of approval steps, approval rules, approval limits, nothing like that. So go to town. It's great.
How does the system help with year-end spending?
The system shows everything up to date. With being able to see the approved requests that come in as commitments, and then having your encumbrances once you've encumbered the money and you've sent out your POs, it actually gives you a true financial picture up to the minute. So again, back to my own story, my year end was the end of March, and I would get to about March 20th, and suddenly I'd have to spend the remaining money. The Sparkrock solution made it so I could see everything that not only was spent, but everything was promised, and how much budget room was left, so that I could go out and spend that money for the people that we supported as efficiently as possible right at the end of the year. So it was really nice having that transparency and being able to see that.
We have a couple more in the chat. So, is this a SaaS solution, and where is it hosted?
Yes, this is 100% a SaaS solution. It's built on top of Microsoft's Business Central, and it's hosted in Microsoft's Business Central Online. This environment is completely closed off. It's extremely secure. There's no database access for anyone. And the beauty here is that you get to pick your data residency. So if you pick to have this in a US data center as your primary location, it actually data replicates fully within the US and no data leaves the country, which controls the data residency, and you're actually in control of your data at all times. Sparkrock actually doesn't have access to your data or your database backups. You control all that access. You provision the users, you give us access, you do everything.
Now, last one. Do you need a Microsoft license to be able to use Sparkrock?
So our licenses definitely require Microsoft licenses, but you do not procure those separately. When you purchase a Sparkrock license, it comes with the corresponding Microsoft license based on that user level. So if you have any questions about licensing or anything at all, make sure you reach out to any of us on the call, or especially Gary, because he definitely wants to hear from you.
That's all the questions. If you have any more, you can always reach out at connect@sparkrock.com. But I'll let Gary close up in case you want to reach out directly to him.
Oh, thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I really appreciate seeing you. I hope that was good information. That's very useful. But please, if you have questions that come to you after the fact, please don't hesitate. Send them away, and we'll be happy to help. Just use that email that Bree just provided, connects@sparkrock.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks.